Okay, Jenna, could you do the roll call, and then describe the declaration of posting?
Thank you, Chair Muller. Chair Muller,
Yes, here.
Commissioners Tonda,
Here.
Habib,
Here.
Lake,
Here.
Wilson,
Here.
Kumar, and Downey.
Here.
Tonight's meeting agenda was duly noticed and posted in accordance with Government Code Section 54954.2.
Thank you. Commissioner Kumar, could you lead us in the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now we'll come to the general public comment on non-agendized item. Members of the public are entitled to address the Planning Commission concerning any item within the Morgan Hill Planning Commission subject matter jurisdiction. Public comments are limited to no more than 3 minutes, except for certain specific exceptions. The commission is prohibited from discussing or taking action on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Jenna, could you tell the members of the public how they can participate?
Thank you, Chair Muller. If you're joining us today using Zoom and wish to provide public comment, you may do so by using the raise hand feature. If you're calling in using your phone, you can use the raise hand feature by dialing *9 and then dialing *6. You can also send us an email at pcpubliccomment@morganhill.ca.gov. Each speaker will receive 3 minutes. If you wish to speak on behalf of someone else, you will receive 1 additional minute per speaker. If you are speaking on behalf of 4 or more people, your comments will be limited to a total of 7 minutes. Please make sure to state each person's name for the record. Thank you.
Okay, orders of the day. I believe the orders of the day are fine the way they are. Good. So we'll move on to the first item, which is a continued public hearing on the world gas demolition and rebuild.
So what staff requests this evening is to continue this item till the following regular planning commission meeting. We did run into some scheduling issues with our environmental consultants and we're ready to have the staff report presented to you all. We did let the folks who spoke last time know,
Great.
and those who gave us written comment know that we were planning on continuing the item this evening. However, any of you who watched the meeting or have had additional questions come up in your mind, if you relay those to me now, we can make sure that we respond to them at the next regular meeting.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, so we can talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you use your mic?
Hello.
Yeah.
So I watched the video, kind of a lively discussion. I wasn't clear, so I sent you an email. I don't know if you got to see it. I know you were out on Monday, or was it just you were out? Can't remember.
I was out from last week to Monday.
Right. There was a number of references. So for the next meeting, maybe, but there was a number of references to San Pedro and Monterey, how dangerous an intersection it is, and the potential impact of this gas station running 24 hours. But I'd be interested in seeing some statistics, if the police had them around, how dangerous is that intersection? Is it any dangerous than any other intersection on Monterey, which does quite a number of sketchy ones? But is there some statistics that back that up, right? I'd be interested in seeing, and if we can't get that information, fine. But I'm curious if do we have that type of information? Because people make these claims and I'd be interested to know, is it true or is it not, right? The second thing, my second question was, I must admit, after the hour and 40 minutes of discussion, it wasn't really clear what's the issue that you're now researching. What's the concern? Is it the red dot versus the orange dot and the potential risk? I'm trying to understand why ultimately did you continue, and what research are you doing with the consultants? And what are you expecting to bring back to the next meeting that wasn't available in the packet that we already had?
What we heard from the residents was a concern over the red dot and the yellow dot. And I made an attempt, and as well as Ms. Brown to explain what that meant, what the risks really were, but we weren't being heard by the residents. And I think there's different ways to explain it. We might even have the scientists come and explain it, or our environmental consultants. But we want to make sure that it's understood. And I sense some hesitancy from the commissioners that if the residents were uncomfortable, they were also uncomfortable as well. So we offered to continue the item. We thought we would be able to have it tonight. We had nothing on the calendar for tonight. Until later that evening, we rescheduled the conversation about start time as well. So we just offered to do that. It seemed that they were getting a little upset. And then other issues came up in addition to the red dot. So
Right, I saw that, sorry.
You saw
I
that.
saw that too, right? And there was a little bit of emotion came in, which is fully understandable, by the way, because I could understand if I saw a red dot on my house,
Right.
I'd be saying, okay, please explain that. I must admit, what I found was just independently sitting there yesterday evening, watching the whole video. I couldn't understand the commissioner's concerns, and I certainly couldn't understand. I felt the same thing where I didn't feel like it was being explained to them correctly, right? So I'm assuming next time around, someone else is going to try and explain, because my interpretation, listening to the video, listening to the recording was, there's a risk anytime you dig something up, right, and reconstruct something, especially a gas station, there's a potential short-term risk. But it seemed like the general consensus was the longer-term risk was less because you've got a newer technology gas station that's under much better environmental control. And I felt that message wasn't coming across at all, right? So, I mean, is that the intent of the next meeting, is have maybe somebody else trying to explain that?
a lot of extra detail. I think we need to explain it in a number of different ways. We can explain the science and then we explain it in more layman's terms. That's easily understandable. Not that people didn't understand the science, but you explain it both ways just to make sure you have as much information out there as possible. And I made an attempt at that, but on the spur of the moment, I don't think it was either the emotions were too high. I didn't do it in enough of a way that was easily understandable.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
Another thing I think you need to remember is that intersection is going to change due to the construction of the project across the street. The senior housing.
Across the
Yeah.
street?
Right. across the
Next to the
street.
post office.
That's San Pedro. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that intersection is going to get modified
Correct.
as part of that. All right.
Modified in what way?
No more left turns on Monterey going north. There will be median, which then also eliminates the issues of the LOS at F.
I see.
Yeah.
That didn't come out either in the meeting,
It
right?
did not come out
Okay.
correctly.
I didn't hear
Yeah.
that being said. Okay. Yeah.
We were well beyond even addressing traffic by the point in that meeting. And then some of these other questions came up after the fact as well.
I think Jennifer, you're right. I think it was prudent to just like,
You might want to put in your microphone now.
sorry, I'm sharing with Cynthia. Just deflate the motion because so the residents get a second attempt to hear what was said. So I think it was a very prudent decision.
Well, I'm not
Yeah.
disagreeing with that. I wasn't clear as to what is the next topic and what will be.
Mhm.
Okay, I got it.
Okay. So we need to open the public hearing. Jenna, could you remind people again how they can participate?
Thank you, Chair Mueller. If you're joining us today using Zoom and wish to provide public comment, you may do so by using the raise hand feature. Doesn't look like we have any callers. Let me check the email here. We have no raised hands.
Okay, seeing no one from the audience, I'm going to request a motion to continue to April 25th. I want to make a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Jenna, would you call the roll, please?
Chair Mueller,
Yes.
Honda,
Yeah.
Habib, Downey,
Yes.
Lake,
Yes.
Kumar. Yes. Wilson.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, with that, we will move on to other business. And this particular item is about our start time. Do we wish to move to 6 p.m.? as the city council is in a week or two,
At the next city council meeting.
next city council meeting?
Sure. So this was an issue that was raised during the goal setting. And it needed an ordinance to change the start time of the meeting. That ordinance was adopted on March 15th and it goes into effect now. And it goes into effect April 15th. And so then the April 19th meeting will be the first meeting that city council will start at 6 p.m.
I think one of their goals in doing it was try not to go so late.
Correct. So they will not, so before it was 7 a.m. with not going to past 11 p.m. And now starting at 6, they're hoping not to go past 10. Correct.
Okay, had nothing to do with having people get there to the meeting. Or members of the city council get to the meeting. Or
That was part of the discussion and it was a lively discussion both at goal setting and then during the regular meeting when they considered the ordinance. They felt that the earlier end time was more prudent for everyone, because sometimes in the past, when meetings would go late, sometimes there'd be public hearings that started at 11. And I think it was felt that trying to move things a little bit earlier was better serve the public.
This is on, it is. So I think, at least for the planning commission, I've got a couple of concerns about it, right? Primarily, first of all, I think the council for years and years have had, not every meeting, but a lot of meetings, hacked agendas, almost too much, right? And I don't mind also saying sometimes they really go on and on and on about a topic and we spend way too long on a topic. And I think they could do a better job of that, but so could we sometimes, right? But I'm a little concerned because personally, I work full-time. I'm usually working right up to 5 or 5:30 in the evening, trying to have my dinner before I come out. And I myself would prefer a later start time, if you're asking me as personally as a planning commissioner, because it's difficult. And if I'm working up in San Jose, there's an hour's commute down here too, trying to grab some dinner before I go to a meeting, because I'm certainly not going to try and eat dinner after a meeting. So 7 p.m. works better for me. And plus also for a lot of our residents, a lot of our homeowners here, we talk about it every week, every other week. Most of them work north of here. Again, commuting down, some working from home nowadays after COVID, but many commuting down, right? I think it's tough to get here for 6 p.m. sometimes, right? And I don't think we have the same issue of running late into the night. Now, Wayne and a couple of us can remember there was a few years when it was pretty brutal, right? We were running up to 11, 12 o'clock at night, but we don't really do that much anymore. And I'm not anticipating we're going to be doing that anytime soon. So my preference would be to stay with the 7 p.m. But let me ask one other question. The ordinance that was passed by city council, that was for the city council only, and we don't have to adopt that, do
City
we?
council only.
Only.
So if the commission chose to make those changes tonight, it would have to go back to city council for approval as part of the city council policy that governs how meetings work for the planning commission.
Okay. I mean, look, ultimately, it's a majority vote here, right? And I'll go with whatever way the vote goes. I'm going to vote no. And it also is going to make me think about how my ability to participate in the planning commission going forward. I think it'll be fine, but if it becomes a struggle, it's something I'll certainly have to consider, right? But whatever the majority votes here at the end of the night, we'll have to adopt.
And I would leave the determination to Ms. Hassan, but if you're on your phone in your car, how do you declare where you're located if you're doing it by hybrid trying to get here? It would be a little complicated. So you're right, it would be a challenge.
Yeah, just along those similar lines. Is my microphone on? It's I think it's more accessible having the meeting at a later time, especially as you mentioned, there are individuals coming back from work, commute times, settling down, maybe reviewing some information. I think one of the things that, as I was considering this, I was thinking about is the end time. So, maybe if the end time is something of concern, rather than stopping at 11, we can stop at 10 and have a vote of reconsideration to continue. Should some meetings go later on in it, if that's something that's of a concern. So just similar to what Liam's point was, I would prefer the 7 p.m., not just because if it's easier for myself, but also I think it's easier for individuals to be joining, considering things that are going on with life and so on and so forth. But if there's consideration of reducing our end time, that's also something I would consider.
Commissioner Kumar?
Personally, 6 or 7 doesn't matter to me, but again, I think for the public, trying to get here by 6 o'clock could be challenging. Our agendas usually aren't crazy long. So we usually do end at a reasonable time. So I'm fine with staying at the 7 o'clock if that's the majority.
When I was working, trying to make a 6 p.m. meeting would be very challenging, and even 7 actually, considering where I was working at. That doesn't affect me anymore as a retiree. However, I would want to ensure that we do everything we can to encourage all people in Morgan Hill who have an interest in the Planning Commission, including all of those who work, to not put any type of barriers up. And so 7 p.m., I certainly could continue that, supporting that. With respect to the ending time, Liam's right. We used to end very late. We used to end the next day. It seems though over the past 2 years, and I know COVID affected this, but we don't have those long meetings anymore. And I don't anticipate that because staff has been astute enough that if there is something really that requires a lot of attention, you create a workshop. And we start much earlier to add more time. So I would be fine with keeping it the way it is. It would reduce the impact on my chief cook at home, my wife, who isn't really thrilled about trying to set up dinner at 4:30. And so as I understand what the city council is doing, the city council has much more on their plate than us. And, being able to reduce the amount of times that they go actually past midnight, I think is a very wise move. But I think for the Planning Commission, I think that we could continue with what we've been doing and still end at a reasonable time, which is what has occurred over the past while. I was going to say a couple of years, but it hasn't been since we came back from COVID. Been more than reasonable, I think.
Commissioner Lake?
Yeah. The reason why I would go for the earlier time is because 2 reasons. We've almost gone up to midnight sometimes. So I thought pushing it earlier to 6 would give us some leeway so we actually go to bed in the same day we started the meeting. Especially when we're doing the housing element, if you recall. So it's not the start time, but the end time. That's a concern for me. I love to get home to actually see my wife awake. So that's number one. Number two is that the majority of people that do show up here, if you did a count, it's mostly the school kids. And so my concern, especially going to the winter time, they have to stay up at 7. They have to wait. We start at 7. They wait until they get their card signed, then they go home and try to get their homework done. Whereas members of the public can easily log on from online, wherever they are, and don't need to be here. They can send an email with a question, or they can log on from home and participate. So my concern, the earliest start time was the end time, and then the kids that show up here so late. So that's why I would go for 6.
I'm happy with 7 o'clock, but I think it's important for the residents that we maintain the time we have now, because if we do change it, you know, we're gonna have a couple meetings where people don't realize it's changed, they missed the meeting or whatever. And we're here obviously to serve the residents. I think we need to leave it the way it is.
Okay, I could actually go either way. But the concern about the public would be, that they may have a difficulty coming down, right? And, cause I know when I worked, I had to leave early to make sure I would get back down here and have a little bit of time to relax and then come to the meeting. So I would have a tendency to defer to the public. Although I think in the hybrid format, they may not come here, they may still go home, so at least they have the ability to see family when their agenda item isn't up. If it comes up a little later, they have a little bit of time, and that's a plus to me because they have a little bit of time with their family and they can go stay tuned to their item. But again, there are items when they will want to be here.
Ask one other question.
Yeah.
So maybe Cynthia, you could answer this, so right now, we declare our start time, and like, is that codified somewhere as regards the start time of the planning commissioner?
It is not. And that was one other thing, regardless of 6 or 7, we do need to take the council policy back to council, and we should put the start time in there. And you can even put in we ask for whether or not we want an extension at this time, 10, 10:30, whatever works for the commission.
Right, because the policy does speak to the end time of 11, but not to the start time.
Oh, okay, but could we change the policy where you say we're going to finish at 10, for example?
Yes, you
Okay.
could.
What do you guys think of that idea?
I think that'd be wonderful.
But we can choose to extend, right?
Correct.
Correct?
And for some housing matters, you may need to for legal
Yes.
reasons, but
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, of course. So what do you guys think of that idea? Just do.
You're basically saying you'd like a 3-hour meeting, and a lot of the time now we're doing it, but I can see when we get into a particular housing project or the housing element itself, where 3 hours may not be enough. Right?
But maybe we need to adjust the agenda accordingly sometimes too. I know that's not easy all the time, right? But if we can say, look, there's a big hot topic, it's going to take several hours. We might say then these other agenda items may be pushed to the next meeting, or there's times we just choose and say, we'll go on until 11 or 12 or whatever, but we
Absolutely.
can make that choice, right?
Yeah.
I would go along with that.
Yeah, I agree.
You need to take a vote, official vote.
We need it because it's
It's
recommended.
very obvious
Okay.
that we're staying with 7, so. Okay, and so
That would be 10.
let's see, the ordinance moved the start time of the regular city council to 6, and then they updated the rules of conduct to have a goal of ending meetings at 10 rather than at 11. And so what we would do is update the rules of conduct for planning commission to have a start time of 7 with a goal of 10. But that's where someone asked if they wanted with the opportunity to extend,
Right.
essentially. Okay, great.
So there's one other section we need to review, right? Is in the planning commissioner section 6.3, I think. Basically requires speaker cards. And I don't know how we do that, especially with a hybrid meeting, which I think is great. Right? I think it really will, over the long run, add participation. So we either eliminate it or we need a way to do something equivalent, but we can't mandate it, right?
You
Can
can't
we,
mandate what they put on the card.
Right,
Right.
okay,
And this is mostly to assist you in running the meeting to know who to call. So if they're on the computer, you would just call them as they've appeared.
Yeah.
And if they're in person and they've turned in a card, then you would call them according to the cards. It's just a way for us to assess who's speaking.
and how many speakers that we would have,
Correct.
because they require to turn in, right?
Correct, for the people who are here, and then the people who are online would do the raise hand feature, so we would know.
Right,
Yeah.
And so Cynthia, you're saying, sorry, just so I'm clear. we can mandate a card. We don't mandate what they put on the card as long as they identify themselves in some shape or form that we could call them to the,
We do not mandate the card. They are requested to fill it out. So if they don't want to fill out the card, we do not make them do that. Most of the time, people are willing to do that so they can be called to speak.
so why would we write anything down then? If we're not, if we can't mandate it. So what would the word say? That we encourage it? Are we-
It currently states request. The policy currently states requested.
We request it?
Yes.
Okay.
And, you know, I think as we discussed, for this meeting, it allowed Jenna to reach out to the people who spoke last time to let them know that the public hearing was being continued, so they knew not to show up. So it is helpful in that way as well, to the extent that people want to provide that information.
Okay. And then the chair can choose, depending on the topic, the time, the amount of people that want to speak. You can say, so Joe, you could say, I'm going to reduce it to 1 minute, for example, or 2 minutes.
Correct.
Can he
Yeah.
limit the number of people to speak? No.
No. So under 6.2 of this section, it says that the chair presiding officer may allow more time and or allow speakers to concede their time, as well as also determine whether it's more than the designated 3 minutes or less. So.
Yeah, and really what you do there is when you have a lot of speakers, you reduce the time so everybody gets a chance to speak, and you ask them not to repeat, just say that they agree with previous speakers' points, right? So it shortens the time a little bit, how you can do it, but you have to let them.
But again, that's a request, not a mandate, right? They can say whatever they want to say, right?
Mhm.
Even if they're repeating this themselves over and over. It's,
Well, if the 3 or the timer, whatever it's at, goes down and turns red, the chair is able to kind of say, we're done.
Right.
Well,
So the only thing our policy could use a clarification on, if you feel it's necessary, is how you want to call them in order, whether they're appearing online or by phone or in person. But not having it in the policy allows you that flexibility to determine it per meeting as what would
Which
work
the
best.
flexibility probably helps, right?
yes.
So that we can sort of either take the in-person ones or the online ones and the email questions, right?
okay.
So we have lots of ways for them to participate,
Yeah,
and we can encourage them to provide us some information so that if, like happened tonight, we have a way to reach out to them and let them know, rather than just depending on the agenda and all of a sudden they get surprised, right?
Yeah, for example, for tonight, Tiffany was able to reach out to Mr. Vega and explain what was going to happen and how the continuance would work. She had reached out to Mr. Lemos, but his voicemail box was full and it didn't answer the phone, and then emailed Doug Muirhead, who had also commented on the item. So.
So I think we have the answers, right?
Yep.
I do have a couple other questions while we're on the topic, but when you're ready.
Go ahead.
So I noticed that the council, not absolutely recently, but definitely in the last year, they have a timer now on each of the council members. Right?
Yes.
Badly needed. I'm kidding, right? No, I'm not. How are they allowed to do that?
No, go for it.
That was a council adopted policy that to time themselves, to
Right.
keep the meetings more on point.
Can we do the same?
That could be discussed amongst you if you feel that that is necessary.
I'm not saying it's completely necessary, but we could, right?
We would have put it into this policy and have
Right.
city council adopt it.
We could, okay.
They've been doing that for some time. I believe they put it in 3 years ago.
4 years.
Oh, right before COVID.
Was it that long
Yeah.
ago? Oh.
Mhm.
Okay,
And it was also, there was discussion at that time about the length of meetings and how long did they want. They were self-policing on how long each of them would go. So.
And having spoken to the clerks who attend those meetings, it is quite a burden on them to have to maintain the timer. So if that is something you want to implement, we need to look at what the workload would be on Jenna, because I think at city council, it requires them to have 2 clerks to enable them to do that.
I was more interested in how does that work and why does it work or where does it come from? But I don't necessarily see the need. But there are times myself, even looking back at myself, that you're kind of going, dude, like you went on way too long, you could have, right? I mean,
always
what kind of
good to
stuff-
watch the
what sparked
meetings,
The question actually was, I
commissioners.
watched the video last night, of this topic we just moved to the next meeting. And, did you watch it? It dragged a little bit, right? I mean, there was honestly trying to be subjective, looking back and I'm going, you could have had this conversation half the time. But anyway, if we don't think we need it, that's fine. I have one other question, which is also in that meeting last night, you reopened the public comment.
Right.
And a speaker who had previously spoken came back up to speak again. You got a little agitated by it, but which is understandable, but is that permitted? Can you permit that? Or what is the law about when you've given your public input for your 3 minutes that was declared? Are you entitled to come back up again? Are you not entitled to come back up again? Is it discretion of the?
It would be at the discretion of the chair. It's not legally required to allow people to speak more than once if they've already spoken. But if a different issue has been raised and the chair thinks it's appropriate to allow somebody to come and speak again, there is nothing prohibiting that either.
Okay, but he's not obligated to do it, but okay. All right,
Right.
I wasn't clear how that works. but-
And you saw what happened in the meeting, right? You opened it up for one person to answer or speak on one issue, and all of a sudden 3 or 4 people needed to speak, right?
Yeah.
And that puts you in a problem child. But
And
we are,
there are instances all the time at city council, even at this, where the chair has said, we're done with the public hearing. Thank you.
Yeah.
And they refuse to reopen. So.
okay. Do you have what you need to put in it, or do we
Yes, we
need,
do.
we don't need to make any kind of formal? Okay. That's the last item on the agenda. It's time for director's report.
Director's report's relatively simple. We'll be back at the next meeting with World Oil. You also got Edith forwarded the letter that we got from HCD about the housing element. We were incredibly disappointed by that letter. We had worked very closely with them and we were with the understanding that the changes that we made were what they were looking for. They switched up reviewers on us, and the person that was, I think, advising that reviewer was no longer working on housing elements either. So we got a brand new one, and that reviewer's first item was our second draft. So we're going to be working very closely with them, and this next one needs to be it. So we'll do our best and make sure that they just want us to stop calling. So if they're watching tonight, no, we'll be talking to them a lot. So,
Is there
Please stop
anything
calling.
you need from us, Jennifer?
not at this time.
Okay.
The changes, as you may have read in the letter, they're not substantial. It's a little bit of additional information or clarity about different topics. They're not asking for new numbers. They're not asking, they add additional anecdotal info to tie with some of the data points, a little bit more here and a little bit more there. So it's not anything major that we would need new review on, but we will be coming back to you once we get you are good to go for certification.
Sounds like.
I'm curious, have you just checked with other comparable local jurisdictions to see if they got the same level of scrutiny as the city of Morgan Hill did?
Yes, we are part of the Santa Clara County Association of Planning Officials and the Planning Collaborative, which is also Santa Clara County. And every reviewer, I can speak, is different, but everyone is having these challenges. And it just really depends who you get. I've heard stories that some of the reviewers have asked for information that's maybe not even necessarily required be put in their housing element. And so they're dealing with it from that perspective. We are very lucky. We're one of the only cities that has the arena met by what's in the pipeline right now. So we're in a very good spot there. So what they're really looking for is reference data to be added to our policies and other literature or other documentation within the housing element. But we were disappointed, to say the least, that we got the letter back that said we weren't ready.
Maybe they're using it to polish up something to be a shining example for everybody.
I don't know about that. So as of right now, the city of Campbell is the only city in Santa Clara County that has gotten pre-certified and they're moving forward with their adoption process now. So
Would you know if in the city of Campbell, their housing element included all those details that our reviewer requested?
I would have to go back and look at their original letter. They had a different reviewer, so I don't really know what they did, but we're gonna talk with them and adopt whatever procedures they followed, which I suspect was calling every day. So we're gonna do what we can.
And what happens if the third draft does not go through?
You get more comments and then you have to submit another draft.
Okay, so
But
it's
the
not
longer
a
it
penalty.
goes on,
Okay.
it's just problematic.
Hmm.
We've already adopted our element, so we have given ourselves a little bit of cover
Mhm.
with that, but we want to make sure that we have things, because without a certified element, there are certain things we cannot do, qualify for grants, qualify for certain things, and so we want to make sure that's locked down.
Now, will we do like we did with the last one, adopt this revision when it goes to the state?
No, we're covered with the last adoption, so what we'll do is, once we get the letter saying that we're ready to be certified, we will come back and re-adopt everything and then send it back up to them and be done until 2031.
Hmm.
Well, 2029 is when we're gonna need to start, so, yeah. Any questions, other items? Okay,
Okay,
Oh, I do have one other question. So, when do we start? So a number of us are all up for, our terms are up in June,
yes.
at least 3, 4 of us maybe. When does that process restart?
I will check with the city clerk. I don't know if have you, any of you gotten anything written?
No.
I would suspect things will go out this month. But I will check in with her, and see what the schedule is and relay that to y'all via email.
Because I'm assuming there's an interview process with the council again, and we have to go
Yes.
through that, so I've got a pretty busy schedule over the next 4, I mean, just to know when it's coming and
Right.
dates and so on, so I can block it out or whatever.
Okay.
it is.
And I hope everyone's interested in remaining.
Thinking about it.
okay,
Well, we conveniently set the time for you.
right.
That's right.
I will adjourn the meeting. It's going down a rat hole.
I've never had a whole.
Right.
Liam is gonna bring his own timer next time.